You know it's a red flag when the lead actor of the film titled Indian 2 tells you that the best part of Indian 2 is Indian 3 that will come out next year. The collaboration between Shankar and Kamal Hassan caused all the rage in 1996. Many people don't know this, but the Hindi dubbed version of the film called Hindustani did exceedingly well also, becoming a blockbuster of the late 90s. The premise of an aged ex-freedom fighter called Senapati who worked in close proximity with Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose and in the current timeline takes matters into his own hands to end corruption led to an extremely interesting and entertaining ride at the movies. While the film still had its fair share of embarrassing subplots, especially that romantic triangle or whatever that was with Chandru, what was the most compelling aspect of the film, according to me, was the grounded nature of Senapati's operations, almost blending and assimilating perfectly as the old man, engaging in covert operations, and eventually becoming a messiah for the voiceless. As he finds himself in the biggest predicament as his own son is involved in corrupt practices that leads to the death of several individuals, Senapati kills Chandru and flees to Hong Kong, promising that he will arrive when he is needed. And now, 28 years later, Shankar has brought the sequel of this much celebrated film, and I cannot emphasize further on how embarrassing it truly is. I'm going to leave no stone unturned in telling you why this was such a painful watch. You have to realize that Shankar and Kamal Hassan are artists who are key contributors in changing the art of storytelling in India, especially Tamil cinema. This impact has been a huge part of people's childhood and formative years, so there's great reverence and respect for them, leading to many not being as unfiltered in their thoughts regarding Indian 2, almost giving it brownie points for effort. But I think it's essential talk about how bad this film is, especially when it takes an existing IP and messes it up so bad. The sequel focuses on a group of young creators and activists who are calling out various corrupt practices taking place in several government departments, only to realize that this is an uphill battle as people being called out assimilate into the system while being only momentarily punished. This leads to an online movement calling out for Senapati's return so that he can make some active change in society. The philosophy that Senapati urges people to follow is specifically giving ownership to the citizens of the nation to sneak out for corruption in their own homes as he eliminates the big bosses, forming the basic premise of Indian 2. Shankar is not alien to the premise of calling out the ills of the system through his movies, something that he did brilliantly with a movie like Anyan, and something that his pupil Atlee also executes through his movies. The film starts with the public service announcement of corruption causes cancer, and you already anticipate the over-the-top and wild ride you have signed up for. I actually have to say that the opening minutes of the film, that especially focus on the perils of society and those who take advantage of being in positions of power, was compelling. I found it interesting on how a young group of creators through social media and their skits were calling out processes in which several scams are conducted in the health, education, sanitation and several other departments. This made me create parallels with the legitimacy and unbiasedness of the news that only seems to be present in the current scenario with independent creators versus mainstream media. The film brilliantly adds the frustration that builds among Siddharth and his group of friends, as there are efforts to curtail them spreading information and calling out corrupt officials, making them only resort to hoping that a hunting dog may return in the form of Senapati, with a trending hashtag of Come Back Indian. Until the title card appears, you are actually invested. But my god, does the film go downhill in its quality of just seeming dated in its execution after it. The film has a very boomer approach towards how social media works. It's one of my biggest pet peeves with Indian films where they think that with one tweet, everything will go viral and become a national movement. It's reflective of when traditional companies want to post something on social media and they hire a team and their only brief to them is, let's make video viral. The power of the internet is way more complex than showcased in these commercial movies, and I find it very funny when one character posts something and overnight it trends globally. While the film is absolutely devoid of making you emotionally invested, unlike the first installment that actually intrigued you about the dichotomy that Senapati goes through while dealing with Chandru's sins, Siddharth and his personal dynamic with his family is the only aspect of this film that leaves some impact. The film spreads itself too thin otherwise, wanting to be the be-all and end-all solution to multiple aspects of society. While the film is somewhat in place when focusing on Siddharth and his group of friends, it's an absolute crime on how they have butchered the character of Senapati to almost becoming cartoonish and a mere caricature in this film. As we explore his whereabouts, the film transitions to an opulent music video with beautiful women, a music video so unnecessary, you just look at the frames and wonder about the sheer money wasted on a sequence that has no bearings in the story. Just scantily clad women dancing while promoting a brand called High Soda. It's jarring to the eye versus looking in any way impressive. Senapati dressed as a mechanic as he uses his Varmakalai to paralyze Yuvraj Singh's father as Gulshan Grover's concubine of models play with a diamond-covered turtle was a sentence that I thought I would never say in a film review. The action that was in one era cool should evolve over decades because they have the ability to otherwise seem unintentionally funny. And oh boy, is the action and impact of Senapati's Varmakalai the most bizarre and matlab kuch bhi sequences you will see this year. It has the ability to make you facepalm and cringe so bad. He uses the traditional art of vital points on a villain like Gulshan Grover, and he, through the attack, transforms into a woman, suddenly becoming coy and shy with makeup on. This carries on with Senapati's action sequences, in possibly the worst interval block through his attack, making a rich Gujarati businessman in a gold-covered hideaway in his own mansion, transforming him to become a horse. While Kamal Haasan is giving him a speech about morality and his corrupt ways, you see a character pretend to be a horse and galloping around the room. In another case, the Varmakalai causes for someone to sing bhajans in repeat mode, and this is supposed to be taken seriously. The film showcases the CBI to be probably the most incompetent force I may have ever seen in an Indian film. Bobby Simha, who is adamant in capturing Senapati in several instances, seems to be the only person in the force of hundreds who is of some use. I have to say, the terrible makeup of Senapati is one of the worst aspects of the film. For a person who needs to be discreet in such operations as his identity is anyway known to the masses, the makers do a terrible job in even remotely making it clear that he may be in disguise. You can literally from a mile away see the terrible prosthetics placed on the character. So rather than blending in with the public, Senapati actually stands out. The way he roams around in this movie scot-free while posting on social media with ease is quite hilarious. Stepping out of the Mumbai airport to casually post online that he is going live in the evening on Facebook, as the CBI twiddles their fingers, not capturing him in broad daylight. The music by Anirudh absolutely leaves no impact. While there was an attempt in the film to have an energetic piece like Vati Coming, it leaves zero impression on you. There are no moments where Anirudh can invoke an emotion of inspiration, grief, or even anger, and this is a rarity for a music director who has been on such a crazy streak. I want to be mindful of not being disrespectful with my analysis, especially of a legend like Kamal Haasan, but the performances also leave no impact. Kamal Haasan is found to be mostly hammy in this role, preaching mostly but never having the ability to inspire you to make change. Even in his Facebook lives, these PSAs barely leave you with a moment of thought or provides you with something of substance that you may have never come across. The film only momentarily gets into the groove when its focus is on Siddharth and his group of friends and calling out the corrupt practices of those closest to them, and how this seems to end the sanctity and peace of their own homes. It's Senapati and his over-the-top antics that really lets this film down. There is a scene in which he attacks a businessman with an aspiration to move to Mars. While speaking in a terrible Punjabi accent, he uses his spit in zero gravity to give his message to the public. Yes, I know I might be saying the most random things, but it's actually a scene. I was totally left speechless. When one calls out one of their family members of being corrupt, the father says that they had seen so many dreams of the wedding where they would have called A.R. Rahman to sing for the girl. And the girl says she will listen to A.R. Rahman as much as she wants on iTunes. I burst out laughing in a supposed dramatic scene. While it was nice to see the late Vivek in the film, who in some scenes has also been recreated with AI, I can really not rave about any of the supporting performances in this film. I had expectations that an actor like S.J. Surya would have some scope in this film, but my god, is he terribly wasted with those god-awful costumes. As the public seems to become hostile with Senapati and his belief system, the film transitions to a climax chase sequence as Senapati embarks on a unicycle through the busy roads and the metro, making it one of the most random sequences of the film that never seems stylized but only unintentionally funny. The CBI is chasing him. He becomes Tony Hawk Pro Skater momentarily, by the way. He then enters a factory randomly, is surrounded by goons who pose like they're in a bodybuilding competition, and Senapati shows off his flab. I mean, he is 100 years old, only to flex and suddenly become a reincarnation of Arnold Schwarzenegger with washboard abs. The action is terribly funny, as through his Varmakalai, goons just pause mid-battle. What's hilarious is that the CBI is absent through most of this action sequence, almost waiting ki, why don't you finish all the bodybuilding posing and fighting, and then we'll start the chase sequence again. The moment this film used a Balan, yes, I'm talking about a Balan, out of all things to put Senapati's Varmakalai to use again, I had actually given up. The conclusion of this film and the trailer of Indian 3 makes me feel nothing but skepticism. Even for Game Changer, how Legends could go so wrong with a film with such a fan base absolutely shocks me. The trailer really should have warned us, but never did I anticipate for it to be far worse.